I got like I keep packing.
And Robert, sorry, I think it's a little zoomed out a little bit, because I don't think it's gonna get me.
No problem.
Oh, here's a magic.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I got those good ones that I got packed.
So we need to zoom in, you think a little out?
A little out, yeah, just a little bit. So we can get all of it.
Hello, this is Beverly. I misunderstood the second email that went out. I was headed that way and turned around.
No worries.
It said no one.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage people to be here, but we got a couple people, it's fine.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry.
The confusion is because the board of supervisors passed a new stage resolution today. Yeah, to continue to say the match should not be meeting in person.
Oh,
Really?
really?
But we're okay. They just don't want to encourage us to all be here. They don't want to require us to all be here.
Right, okay. They don't want you to tell me we want.
I didn't know. I
Just know
I was asking Danny about that.
Does the camera look okay with you?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
It's Don or is that the clerk? It's Don. Wow, okay.
Okay.
Hi, Addie.
But when we call, we're gonna have to go to the front.
Robert, when we start talking, where can we sit? Do we have to go over there? Yeah, we have to go in the eyes of the camera.
You don't have to. I can turn the camera toward you. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Annie.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you. You gotta get attitude.
Oh, I got my, I got I'm glad I'm here. I think Lord is there.
Yes.
Hey, you still here? What's that?
Oh, I'm good then, I just had to drink water. I just got too many clothes on, I just, the wind, I was trying to stand on. The wind was picking up, and the wind was pulled out here, got tripped. Okay?
What's your opinion? Do you see anything? And you have.
Yeah, I got extra pieces.
Robert, you have a pen?
I do, thank you.
Okay.
You need them for the.
No, I just gave you.
Oh,
All right, let's get started.
yes.
Right there. All right, so we have calling the meeting to order. And we have Annie present here. We have C. Beverly. Who else? Whoever. Dr. Clarkson here.
Here.
Both here.
Yes, she is.
Princess. Princess here? I can't.
What about that?
Princess is not here.
Lily.
Lily is not here.
We do have a form. Okay, so let me get, I would entertain approval of before I do the approval of the agenda in the minutes. It didn't total up, it's questionable about if there's gonna be, go to 2 hours or exceed, so in the categories where I put an expansion, like 25 minutes to 30 is the cap, and cut off at 30 on that, on the first one. And then on the presentations, it's 15 to 20. 20 is the absolute max. We will cut off where we are, just so everybody knows. If there's other questions, then you might want to submit them to Robert. And we could make sure we get those answers back if everybody don't get the questions answered. And that was 15 to 20 on the 6s for both of those. Okay, So with those adjustments, I entertain a approval of the agenda and the minutes.
Chairman Gilmore, this is Annie. I would like to approve the agenda with those additives amendments to the agenda. And also, we do not have minutes, or do we have minutes, Robert? If I can ask you, I did receive my minutes. So do we have minutes? Do you have minutes?
Yes, I did send the board a full packet of the minutes for last month and the 2 months before that.
Okay, so what's the pleasure to folks? You want everybody feel comfortable with voting on them? Everybody had a chance to see them, or you want to delay it? We can do that too. Up to you.
With the question with the question on the floor, I would suggest for us to hold off until our next meeting. If possible.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if any of the
Others, okay.
what their opinions are, if they were able to read it. Anybody talking to me? Okay, unless I hear something, I guess we will just put that over to the next meeting. We'll be voting on a number of minutes in November. Okay. And we have a public comment.
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry, my fault. On the agenda, there was a motion by Annie. Did I get a second for the agenda?
I second the approval of the agenda.
Okay, all in favor, I know you by saying aye.
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 All abstentions, motion carries. All right, now we're gonna go to public comment. 3
That's
minutes per person. And you state your name and then go forward.
Sure. So my name is Cordell Hendler and I'm a Richmond resident. So good evening, Chair Gilmore, Ms. Meredith. I have one announcement for you all. You are cordially invited to attend a performance of Our Town this Friday evening at Contra Costa Civic Theater. Tickets are $35 for adults, but if you get the youth rate, it's only $15. But you just have to show your proof of vaccination card, and that's it. And then that's the only announcement I have so far.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, we're going to move to the law enforcement report. Is someone for the sheriff available?
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Buford here. For the last couple of months, once again, you guys have went down. Only 271 calls for service as opposed to 290 the month before. And you know, the month before was a little higher. So for the last few months, it's actually been going down. It's the highest thing we had. We had a couple people firing off of handguns, maybe 3 of those calls, no injuries, nobody got killed or nothing like that. Suspect was still at large. We didn't have any assault with deadly weapons. We didn't have any reported robberies. We had about 5 warrants. Other than that, things have been pretty much status quo in North, which is a really good thing. I haven't had a lot of calls to my office for complaints about quality of life issues either. So with that, I'll open up to the board for questions.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, hold on, go ahead.
No.
Chair.
Yeah, Don, this is Dr. Clark. I have a question. Good afternoon to the Bruford. So in terms of those homicides that you have reported previously, and nobody had been arrested for any of those?
I don't have any, sir, at this point, I don't have any information at that. I will have to contact Investigation and see if they can tell me about, and then report back at the next meeting. Let me make a note.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions for the sheriff?
Have
If
none.
not, go ahead. Somebody have a question?
No, it was just me. I said I have none.
Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you. We'll move to the Richmond PD. Is anybody here from Richmond PD to make a report? I do not see anybody from Richmond PD. Is anybody from the Highway Patrol available to me? Highway Patrol. Seeing, hearing none, we will move to item number 5, which is safe relocation of homeless encampment near Castro Street. Presentation by Michelle Milo. Is Michelle present?
Chair Gilmore, it looks like Michelle Milo is running a little late. I would ask that we perhaps could hold that item and move on to the county's active transportation plan item.
So let's move right there then. Who's presenting it? Is someone from the
Yeah, I apologize. My microphone was not working. Hi, Mauricio Hernandez with Alta Planning, and so and my colleagues from the county and Fair and Pierce should be around here.
Yes, sorry, some audio issues.
Oh,
Hello,
hi.
everyone. Again, Jeff Valeros
Hi.
with Contra Costa County Public Works, and then I have my staff engineer here, Alexander Zandian.
Cool.
And then Mauricio is taking lead. Thank you. And we also have Susie Hostadek from Fair and Pierce.
Hi, everybody.
And I am going to be just putting together a presentation really quickly. Let me know when you see our screen. Oh God, nope. 1 second. Sorry about that. There we go. Are you seeing my screen? And I apologize that my technology is going crazy today.
I can't see it, Mauricio.
Not yet, Mauricio.
Sorry about that. How about now?
Thumbs up.
Awesome. There we go. Okay, Jeff.
Yes, so great to see everyone again. As I mentioned, Jeff Valeros, Contra Costa County Public Works, Transportation Engineering Division. I spoke with you all last month, kind of just giving you a quick little update of our active transportation plan, hopefully getting some input from community members. And I pointed to our website, activecontracosta.org, where we moved on to the next stage of this project, and we kind of here to present our findings. If I mentioned this before, again, if you want to get in touch with us, Alexander Zandian is your go-to man over there. So we have our website as well as his email address in case there's any questions, concerns, comments. If something comes to mind at 2 a.m. and you have a thought, feel free to just shoot an email out, and we'll document that, and we can definitely follow up with you. So I don't think I showed this last time, but here's a photo of our team, and hopefully you can see our faces in person sometime in the future. Alexander Zandian, Jeff Valeros, Robert Sarmiento, I don't think is with us. He's one of our transportation planners over at Conservation and Development. And then we have Susie and Carrie McNichols from Fair and Pierce on more of the engineering side. And then we have Alta, Mauricio Hernandez, and Ben Frazier, who help very much do a great job with our community outreach. And so I think this is over to you, Susie or Mauricio.
Yeah, I'll take this over, Susie. So today we just wanted to kind of give you an overview both of the project. I know that you all have talked with Jeff before, but just kind of give you an update on where we are. Some of the existing conditions, some of you may have seen this already. Others, it's going to be kind of an introduction to all things active transportation. And then Susie's group is going to be talking about some of the draft project recommendations. I guess we have gone through the first phase of the project, which we asked a number of questions, particularly around what's going on in the community and what are the issues going there. And nowadays we want to start presenting some of those recommendations based on your feedback. Then we'll open it up for some questions and answer and just some feedback on some of the very preliminary recommendations. And then of course, we'll present some next steps for both the community here, but also in the larger Contra Costa County. So again, on the project overview, there are a number of agencies that do or deal with transportation here in the county. And as you can see, there are the CCTA as well as the county itself and Jeff's group. We are all kind of work together to bring both the residents as citizens their transportation issues. And of course, each of the cities have their own transportation departments or component, I should say. But there are other parts of the county that are unincorporated where the county does take the lead on the implementation of them. So our project is the first of its kind for the county. And I know that there was an initiative before from CCTA on the active transportation as of the county as a whole, but we are particularly focusing on unincorporated areas of the county. So those areas where there are no cities or jurisdictions that are working together. But again, just an introduction to active transportation. It's basically all forms of people-powered transportation. People-powered transportation, say that 3 times. It's basically walking, biking, and rolling. And we're calling rolling or defining rolling as people with a mobility device, scooting, or skating. So everybody here, I do want to highlight everybody here in this meeting is a pedestrian at least once, whether you're walking to the store, whether you're walking to the park, whether you're walking to transit, you are a pedestrian anytime. So that's one of the things that we should consider. So what is an active transportation plan and what are we focusing on? And the active transportation plan is basically setting vision for the for how to implement projects for focusing on improving walking, rolling, and bicycling conditions in the community. Basically, this will jot down our 5 to 10 years on projects to implement, improvements to do, and also policies to focus on. And again, once again, I did want to highlight that this is the first ATP for unincorporated Contra Costa. And because there is a lot of coordination with agencies, I do want to highlight that we are not planning in a vacuum. So there is conversations and we have reviewed a few different plans to kind of put it all together so that, for example, if Richmond is proposing a bike lane in a particular area, an unincorporated area within Richmond may have, doesn't switch from a bike lane to, I don't know, a shared use path or something like that. We just want to make everything coalesce all together. In terms of project timeline, this is kind of a 1-year plan. We started earlier on this year. We put together a really cool website, which Jeff and Public Works has highlighted again, but we did some early workshops in WebMap. That's basically our discovery phase. And now we're both in the kind of showing our results phase. We are coming up to a few pop-up events. So you may have seen, or you will be seeing some of our staff out there in different locations. And I'll talk about those a little bit later. And we'll be talking to a few different community meetings and of course the MACs. Afterwards, the hope is to have a draft plan for everybody to review by the middle of January, by early January, and then a final plan by February/spring of next year. Some existing conditions, and you may have seen this already. So just really quickly, we do have both a bicycle facility toolbox and a pedestrian facility toolbox. And these are all of the tools that we have to improving conditions for people bicycling. Right here, you see we've kind of divided the bicycle facilities into the low stress facilities and a little bit higher stress facilities. So lower stress facilities are those that are a little bit more separated, like trails or separated bikeways, what transit nerds or transportation nerds would call class 4s and class 1s. But we also have buffered bike lanes and bike boulevards that do offer some comfort and some connectivity for people bicycling. In terms of existing conditions, the county itself, because we're not only focusing on Richmond, we have a ton of really good trails and shared facilities that do serve as a backbone for active transportation in the county. However, sometimes these trails don't connect or do have some some difficult crossings that make it difficult for folks to connect and or cross over. And as with a number of different places, we do have gaps in the network that can reduce that connectivity and of course comfort. On bikeways, you may have seen many of these. There are many popular recreational cycling routes. And however, those cycling routes tend to focus on the Lycra people like myself, the recreational bicyclist that goes and bikes anywhere. And there aren't that many facilities currently in unincorporated areas that focus on the A280, so mom and pop, my grandma, my kid that go out bicycling. So those are the folks that we're really hoping to target, since that's a large proportion of the population. Just as with bicycle facilities, we do have a toolbox of pedestrian facilities, and this is not super comprehensive. These are the ones that we use the most. Of course, sidewalks are the biggest one that folks tend to focus on, as well as crosswalks, but we do have some rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Try to say that 5 times simultaneously, or RRFBs. We do talk about curb extensions, LPIs, and PHBs, and or hawk signals to improve crossings along major corridors. Some existing conditions on the sidewalk gaps. I do want to talk about those. There are gaps in the network. I mean, this is not only just for Contra Costa, it happens everywhere. Some of them are in disrepair or are not fully accessible. And by accessible is the width of the, we're talking about the width and also the type of facility that's out there. There have been some improvements throughout the county. This one in particular is in Pablo Dam Road and also Bronte, where there was no sidewalk. A sidewalk was implemented so that as to improve access to schools and a number of facilities. We do talk a little bit about crossings, as they do provide access to destinations and they do help us on the major corridors. As noted here in the slide, some of the major corridors are the ones that tend to have the high stress or difficult crossings. So we want to focus on those and provide some improvements on them. And then some of them do have some faded crosswalks or missing crosswalks that, you know, sometimes identify or help highlight the fact that a pedestrian is going to be there at the intersection. So that's something to focus on as well. Finally, and this is a big one for people with mobility impairment, is some crosswalks and some access. Some of them lack access in the form of curb ramps or accessible curb ramps, since things have changed a little bit. On our end, we've done a number of community engagement events, which have focused on workshops, stakeholder meetings, some pop-up events. We did a comprehensive online survey and an interactive map, as well as, and we're also going to be focusing on providing an opportunity for folks everywhere here in the county to review the draft plan. In terms of the workshops, we did have a number of people joining us, and much of the feedback that we received is the focus on roadway safety. Safety is a big issue for everybody here in the community. Folks did want us to focus on building more trails or those separated facilities that do provide those comfortable connections, and as well as providing that prioritization of improvements in disadvantaged communities that may or may not have seen investments in the past, I don't know, 20, 50 years, in particular for active transportation users. And the final one was trying to calm traffic down. So as you can see, there is a theme of roadway safety and improving conditions and making it more comfortable for people to walk and bike. On the stakeholder meetings, I think you may have seen this already as well. We did meet with a number of school districts throughout the county, some advocacy groups that focused on walking, biking, and youth, and as well as senior groups or senior advocacy groups. The county staff did go to a number of MACs and other community meetings that provided some feedback or requested feedback from the community. And then finally, we also met with partner government agencies just so that we can all coordinate on projects and see what they were doing, check that the policies actually all come together, that there's no policies that one agency is doing right or are not. And so these meetings allowed us to share everybody's thoughts on what's going on in the county, what works, what doesn't, and what we can all work together on. They also helped kind of foster that, what is it called? Collaboration between agencies and between partner CBOs with county staff, since sometimes we may not have the time or have had not the chance to connect with everybody. On the survey side, this survey was out for about a month and a half, 2 months. We did ask a number of comprehensive questions that focused on biking, walking, and rolling. About 225 people took the survey, and some of the results are very much aligned with what we heard in the meetings before. They were very much focused on safety improvements and about using different modes for different options for different modes. The top locations where people would like to walk and bike and roll to are very much what you would expect: going to transit to go to work, taking BART or transit stations or bus stops, as well as parks, stores, restaurants, and bars. In terms of travel comfort, people did not fully feel comfortable walking and or biking in some areas of the county. Again, not a big surprise. We all do have some concerns about this. And some of the recommendations that folks provided for us is more and better bike lanes or bike infrastructure, greater separations between vehicles and the users. So the users being people walking and or biking or rolling, as well as safer streets to cross, or safer ways to cross the street. As I pointed out, some of those intersections do provide some, or do represent some difficulties for people walking and biking. In terms of kind of our next topic was going to be the interactive map. We do have a really awesome website, activecontracosta.org. If you haven't checked it out, you haven't seen this, but if you did, you saw this map, which did allow folks to provide specific geographic feedback. So you could zoom in and out of the map and provide input on where you bike, walk, and or roll, as well as those difficult intersections that represent some very, very big issues for people walking and biking. This same map is going to be available, or the map option is going to be available once, as we're populating the draft recommendations that will be presented. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll see that this map will turn into a different map, and folks will be able to zoom in and out and check out all of the recommendations that we're putting forth, so that the community can provide input on them. So you'll be able to go in and out of the map and click on each recommendation, and you'll see what is recommended, how it's recommended, and provide any input, whether you agree or not, or would like to see something different. In addition to all of the other stuff that I've talked about, we're also, we're glad to be back with the community and being able to kind of shake hands in a way in pop-up events and meetings. These are, I'm just highlighting a few that we have either gone to or will be going to. We just ended the Rodeo Chili and Salsa Cook-Off. There's a number of other events that we'll be focusing on and we'll be going to a few different MAC meetings, as well as the CCTA's BPAC, which is going to be important to get some additional feedback. And of course, we do want to request feedback from the Senior Mobility Action Council, since they do have some really interesting feedback. In terms of future events for those pop-ups, we're also going to different places where the community is. Again, extremely excited that we not only have this screen over here, but we can actually get to talk to you all. If you find yourselves either the Hercules Safeway, Alamo Certified Farmers Market, Bay Point Library, or Pittsburgh BART, please say hello. We are there, we'll be there to kind of guide you through it. As if you have questions, by all means, let us know. We are doing these pop-ups. Of course, there is COVID, so we did have some considerations, but either way, any person will be able to provide feedback via the website. So do let them know about the website. Once again, it's activecontracosta.org. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Susie, who will be talking about some very early project recommendations focusing in North Richmond.
Thank you so much, Mauricio, and thank you all for hosting us tonight. So when we were looking at the project recommendations, what we were really hearing from folks in North Richmond was a few things. One having to do with access to important destinations like schools and parks within North Richmond, and then also access outside to cities of San Pablo and Richmond, and making sure that the bicycle and walking facilities are continuous and clear between those communities. And also really making sure that the trail systems are linking up and making sure that people can get to all of the beautiful natural resources in the surrounding areas and have those trails be safe and connected. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So some of those examples of trail projects we're looking at, as many of you may know, the Richmond Parkway has a Bay Trail connector on the side there. We've heard from multiple folks that the path there needs to be widened and improved and made more comfortable and separated from traffic. And we've also heard that that crossing of the Wildcat Creek Trail is really like flooding sometimes and dark and not so good. And so we're recommending either an at-grade crossing or an improvement to that undercrossing. An at-grade means that there would be a crosswalk there, just to make sure that those two trails are connecting to each other and making a good experience for people walking and biking in and out of the neighborhood that way. So that's an example of one type of trail project we might see. And then we also have some school and park access focused recommendations. There's quite a few streets in North Richmond that have sidewalks in some blocks and not in others, which can create some accessibility issues. And so to kind of focus on prioritizing, we're recommending some bike boulevards on Chesley and Jaramita. And so a bike boulevard, I'm not sure if people are familiar with like Nevin Avenue, the new part near Richmond BART between City Hall and BART. That's kind of one example of a bike boulevard nearby where there's really, really narrow crossings at the intersections, and there's like new plantings and new bicycle markers on the street to make a calmer atmosphere. And so the idea with those would be to make sure that people walking and biking to school, to Verde Elementary, to Shield Street Park, and into cities of San Pablo and Richmond could use those streets safely and comfortably, as well as bike and ped improvements on Market Avenue, which could include bike lanes as well. Again, with that really crucial connection in and out of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So just to kind of look at that from the map view, we have our trail connections, and then Market Avenue and the bike boulevards are red there. And then the north-south connection there on Jackson Way, all of you are, I'm sure, familiar with the way that the street changes a lot going up, and there's some sections that have been already improved. For example, there's a new trail crossing, the Wildcat Creek Trail crossing near the baseball field there is already new, and that has those flashing beacons like Mauricio was talking about. But then there are some other sections further down that aren't updated yet, or there's one section that has a really big median and others that don't. So the idea with a class 4 separated bikeway and would be part of a larger study to kind of look at all of Fred Jackson Way and figure out how to make a continuous bicycle facility and also pedestrian improvements so that it's accessible for people with disabilities and anybody walking or biking along, and also trying to cross that street to make sure that's safe. So those are kind of our early recommendations, and we're really looking for, at this stage of the project, the idea is really to go back to the community and say, hey, did we get this right? Are we missing anything? Are there places where there's a missing sidewalk, maybe in the neighborhood that's not necessarily a specific, destination access, but just really has an accessibility need for some folks who might live there with a disability or something like that. So we're really looking for that kind of fine-grained feedback and also just a temperature check on whether we're headed in the right direction here. So yeah, with that, I think we'll jump into any questions or comments, and in fact, like as specific as you want to get with us, like a specific crosswalk or intersection where you've had trouble, we're really looking for that kind of fine-grained input so we can add those things to our project list.
Okay, thank you for this presentation. I do have a couple of questions for you. I don't know who is gonna answer it, but I will just attempt to throw it out to you. It has been a lot of discussion I see through the presentation that focus a lot on the sidewalks itself. But due to the flux of traffic that is now starting to grow here in North Richmond and on the outer of North Richmond into San Pablo, have you looked at the increasing of traffic lights and in order for safety for individuals that are walking and riding the bike, the flux of entering and putting more traffic signs or traffic lights in order to allow individuals to have that freedom to walk off from side to side and not just focusing on the sidewalks?
I can take a first stab, and then maybe if staff wanna jump in as well. I think that's a great question, and especially with the complete streets projects that we look at, where there might be some changes to the way that the whole street is operating. With a project like that, at the next stage, once that project is prioritized, the team would then look at the signals and the intersections as well to make sure that they're operating well, basically meaning that they're functioning in a safe way. So for example, a lot of the time, a pedestrian safety issue and a safety issue for people driving is similar. Like, for example, if there's a signal where there's a left turn that's difficult to make and people are kind of like rushing to get a left turn in, that can create a safety issue, both for drivers and a pedestrian who might be walking there on that leg of the intersection. So those are the types of projects that will come next after this kind of high level network. And that's kind of a future phase once we're at the project level. Do Public Works want to also chime in on that?
Sure, I'll take my best stab at this. I'm not sure who asked the question, but thank you for asking. If I understood correctly, it's kind of just the use of traffic signals to kind of help with safety. I'm no traffic engineer, I'm going to fully disclose, so I'll speak as much as I can, but there are a multitude of factors that are considered when putting in a traffic signal. And so what we call is we would run warrants on that intersection, and they would look at a multitude of things. So if there's a particular intersection that is of concern for you, please feel free to shoot Alexander an email and we can have our traffic folks take a look into it further. But it's not a quick process of just implementing those, unfortunately.
We'll say, Castro.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I do have a couple of questions. There were a couple of surveys that were mentioned. One that was really about prioritizing the needs, like calming traffic speeds, improving safety. And there was another one that mentioned that 225 people filled out the survey. I wonder how many residents from North Richmond filled out those surveys?
That's a very good question, and I don't have that. We don't have that specific data. We could definitely look into it and provide that information. So
yeah, it would be helpful to disaggregate it as we're thinking about what is it that the community is saying. Contra Costa is large, and I'm sure the needs look very different from each location. The other one is there's an interactive map. Did you feel like there were more results or just opinions from the community yielded from that map as opposed to the surveys? I'm just wondering.
that's also a really good question, and I think they are very much complementary to each other. I think the map itself provided the option for folks to include issues that are much more geographically focused. So, for example, if there is an improvement that is needed at an intersection, as was mentioned earlier, that would be the interactive map, whereas the survey really focused on high-level policies and high-level issues rather than more specific geographic issues.
Got it. So people had to fill out two different links or two different forms.
They didn't have to, but they could. There was an option to use both of them since they were both linked to the same website as well.
Okay, got it. And I did see there was a toolbox that mentioned like rapid flashing beacons and a couple of other things. I'm wondering, based on yeah, that's the one. Thank you. Yeah. Based on like community input, how do you assess for which of these options? And this may be like a lengthier response, but I am wondering, just in terms of like equity and resource allocation, how is that being thought through? And if a community says, you know, there's like high traffic or we need more bike lanes here, how are you having that conversation internally or even externally with community members as to, you know, what you all are thinking about in the ATP plan?
Yeah, perhaps the county can take a stab at that.
Yeah, I definitely, Robert Sarmiento, if you're still on the line, I'd love to hear you chime in on this, but equity is a focus. And I believe that's also a component of our general plan update that actually, Robert, if you want to just take a stab at this, be great.
Yeah, that's also something, you know, this plan is going to consider because, you know, we have, you know, there's going to be a prioritization process, you know, for determining, you know, which active transportation projects we want to work on first. And one of the criteria we're going to look at is this project located what is called an equity priority area or community of concern, that designation. So those kind of projects would get, you know, higher priority than a project that's in a, you know, we have higher priority. So
yeah, I would just reiterate that the prioritization process hasn't happened yet. At this stage, we're still kind of putting together the full list of project recommendations and trying to kind of confirm those needs overall. And then there will be like a kind of a scoring process to try to understand where the greatest safety need is using existing data, where the greatest need from like equity perspective is, where the places that we've heard most from the community. But we also don't want it to be like who has the loudest loudspeaker. So there's really intended to be a robust prioritization process. And from a kind of engineering standpoint, I did want to mention that the toolbox you saw with all the different kinds of crosswalks, those have like kind of different purposes, and there's also a like engineering process to determine which is most appropriate at which locations from a safety perspective. So there's kind of that component of it as well.
Thank you. And I promise this is my last question. This was a really good presentation. Yeah, I think it would be helpful, or it might have been helpful to see a priority matrix, because if I think about North Richmond, I'm like, everything's, or like, I would give you 30 locations, but realistically, you're really going to look at, it sounds like the team is realistically going to look at a certain set of like priorities based on the criteria, and maybe that is more helpful. I don't know, but I would also just love to reach out. I think, Susie, you mentioned if there's any particular area, there are places that I'm thinking that don't have a sidewalk or could use the bike roll walk framework. So I'd like to reach out to you just to mention a couple of places that I think I didn't see on the active Contra Costa interactive map. But thank you all for this presentation, and hope to hear updates on just like how many community members from North Richmond, or what were the things highlighted from the surveys as it relates to North Richmond. Thank you all.
I don't see any hands up. Thank you for your presentation. I just want to encourage you to look holistically, comprehensively, collaborating with different agencies to look at the big picture. You may have a part, there's work going on now in North Richmond, and it'd be good to have a consolidated look at what everybody's doing so we can see the whole picture of what it's going to look like. And from there, hopefully, the priorities we will come clear when we look at the bigger picture. So thank you for your presentation. And we're going to move on to the next speaker, which will be Michelle Milam. I heard she's here, so I'm not seeing everybody, but again, thank you for your presentation. But Michelle, will you please come forward and make your presentation?
Yes, and thank you for your patience with me. Unfortunately, I had some Wi-Fi connectivity issues, and so we all know how fun that's been over the last couple of months. So I appreciate you all for doing that, and I'm very honored to be able to come and address this body and talk about something that's of real importance and concern, and get some of your feedback. So I'm Michelle Milam. I see a lot of familiar faces out there. For those of you who don't know me, I am the crime prevention manager for the city of Richmond. I work with the Richmond Police Department, but I also have a special assignment to the city's Task Force on Homelessness. And I've had that assignment for the past 3 years, which is what I'm coming to talk to you today about. Some of our existing encampments that we have, they're located in the city, and specifically the Castro encampment, and some efforts that we are looking to make to try to improve the conditions there for the lives of those who are in those particular encampments. Robert Rogers is going to help me out because of my connectivity issues. So he actually has a PowerPoint that he is going to run for me. So let me know if you all can see the PowerPoint when it comes to the screen.
Michelle, please proceed. Please proceed, and I will get that queued up as soon as possible.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So what we're going to talk about, and what we wanted to talk about today, is a little bit about the Castro encampment. I wanted to thank you all for sending some representatives to the MAC board meeting, to a meeting that we hosted about 2.5 weeks ago. And that was a meeting of Shields Reed neighborhood, the MAC board, some of the business community, to talk about how we could potentially impact the existing Castro Street encampment that developed in the early days of the pandemic. For those of you who probably have been following, is in the early days of the pandemic, one of the things that we saw immensely was the resource needs for those who are unsheltered throughout the city and throughout the county. And some of the early advice we got from health officials about encampments that started to form, larger encampments than we probably had seen for quite some time, was that we didn't want to break those encampments up initially because of the concern of the spread of COVID-19 and not being able to do proper contract tracing and get people the medical resources that they would need in the early days of the pandemic. And as time went on, there was a large kind of community of vehicles that has formed that you all are familiar with around the Castro Street area. It's also around the Ryden Road area. The city council initially was looking at doing a safe parking program. And then the pandemic hit, and it was really kind of clear that it was going to be very difficult to be able to identify a long-term site for a safe parking program. So really what we wanted to do was work with the city and the county to try to see what could be done specifically. The city council wanted to know to impact the existing encampments where they were. And so hopefully you all can see this first slide of the existing encampment. This is the Castro Street encampment. As you all can see where it's located, you can see it's framed by Richmond Parkway and Hensley. You've got HelloFresh on one side, and actually it's two parcels or two kind of pieces of land that are kind of pulled together into the existing encampment. One of the things that we realized early on in this new strategy that the city council had to kind of provide the services where folks are is that there really needs to be additional resources because as of right now, there's a lot of activity that's going on in the encampment that I'm sure some of you all are seeing that makes it difficult for those who are in house residents who are there to get the resources that they need to figure out what the next step is, whether that's long-term housing, whether the next step is to figure out how to get into a program, whether the next step is to be assessed by the housing provider, HCEB, to get them into the system so that they have access to all the different services that might be offered or finding a good match. It's harder to do that in a place where, people are afraid to be able to come in and assess services. And I know many of you have visited encampments. Some of you I know, like Annie, have done some work in the encampment, and it's really important to be able to build that kind of trust and to create that sense of safety and community so that the services can be rendered. We've been meeting monthly with the business owners and some of the neighborhood folks who are surrounding that area, just to catch everybody up and make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page of what's happening around that specific encampment. And one of the questions that was posed to the community at that specific time was, do we think that this is a place, because it doesn't have a fence and there's easy access, so anybody can come inside of the encampment. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to kind of protect the integrity of everybody who is there and who is living there and to give them the services that they need. Do we think that this is really a place where we can safely render services? And the answer at some of those meetings was no. So there is an ad hoc committee that's composed of Supervisor Joya, in addition to our mayor and 3 of our city council members and others that has been charged with oversight of this specific strategy of dealing with what we would call basically the unsanctioned sites. And so we brought that information to them, and they said, we really want to go back and have a conversation with the community about this and look at what could be potential alternatives. So with that kind of being the framing, we had a convening about 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that we wanted to do was get some feedback on some potential alternative sites that we could take a look at. And some of them I'm going to talk about that are in North Richmond tonight. There are some sites that we've looked at in other areas of the city as well. So going to the next slide, it should go to the Drew Middle and South. So one of the things we had talked about initially was looking at is, moving it just slightly so that we could have an opportunity to fence the site in. And one of the requirements, to be able to have a good place that we could set up and provide services for these vehicles was to be able to have a place that's fenced in where people can come in and out. Some folks do go to work, so if they need to come in and out, they could come in and out safely, that we didn't block access to the Bay Trail, and that it would be a place that be large enough to contain existing vehicles of those who would want to come into the program and sign the program agreement and agree to be part of the case management process there. This site, unfortunately, did not pan out because what we realize is that this is under active monitoring by DTSC. And it's an active site. And so once we reached out to them, we realized that this would not be a viable alternative because it would not be able to probably get the approval that would be needed to deem it appropriate for vehicles. And part of this, and you guys probably know with the environmental process, I'm sure is not unfamiliar to many of the folks who are around this table, is when, you know, DTSC takes a look at these things, in terms of habitation, they weren't really considering people living in their vehicles. They're looking at digging dirty dirt and, you know, having access that's that might be potentially breached. So that site really, because it would take a long time to be able to try to get maybe additional permits and approvals, didn't seem to be one that would be feasible in terms of what we were looking for. So next slide. The other site that was recommended that we take a look at, and the community actually really liked this site, was the flea market site. So as you can kind of see, if you take a look at that, you have, the acreage in the red area that's outlined, and then there are some existing adjacent sites that are next to it. But we were specifically looking at the area that's outlined in red. Partly because we felt like it was a place where there would be a lot of space for vehicles to be able to park, to safely distance them, to be able to put porta potties, to be able to fence that area in, to be able to allow access and egress, and that it was paved. We did take a look at some of the environmental qualities, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board is the oversight agency for that particular site. And it's not an active site in terms of monitoring, so it looked like it really had and held some promise. However, it unfortunately, this is not a city-owned site, so we're going from property that might be privately owned, and you do have to have consent of the property owner to be able to do a program such as what we hope to do on that particular site. So that site, unfortunately, does not look at this time to be feasible. But it was a very interesting site that, obviously the community wanted us to explore, and so we took a look at that. The next slide. So the next option that we took a look at was the Maritime Safety and Security Center, and this is owned by Chevron. We have had conversations with Chevron. They have been very amenable to trying to work with the city to be able to find some ways to support the effort to make this a site safer, and find a site that that would be more conducive to some of the activity we'd want to have there. As you can kind of see, it has a lot of parking stalls. It also does have an active safety and security training center, and so that was part of the issue that we have with this particular site, is that there actually are cars and other vehicles that are coming in and off of the site. And it would be challenging to be able to have this be a joint use for the RVs and the vehicles, and also have the activities of the Maritime Safety and Security Center operating at the same time. Though Chevron is continuing to work with us and offer perhaps other options, this wasn't one of them. And then if you go to the next slide, which is 6, you can kind of see some of the other options that are Chevron owned that they were looking at. A lot of them don't seem to meet some of the criteria that you would need to be able to do a project like this. However, they're willing to work with us to take a look at some of these other sites. And next slide. So we knew that this is the least favorite site, or at least favored site, that we've seen so far, is the North Castro Street area. It is an area that is city owned and operated. So, there is some land use that we have in this particular area. What was proposed for this was to potentially block off either end, if you can take a look at it, of the street, and maybe use a small portion of the street to be able to either stage a number of vehicles or move vehicles. However, we also know that this is an area that we would want some community feedback on, because we have kind of, heard over time consistently some concerns about this area. And so when we had our meeting 2 weeks ago, we all, I think, agreed that we ranked this as maybe not out of the question in terms of the conversation, but as the least favorable option and the least favorable choice. But we could come back and revisit it if, you know, we were not able to find another suitable alternative. So this is the North Castro Street area, as you can see. And then next site. So the next place that we looked at is Factory Street site. Right now, this is a site that's for sale. It's more of a long shot. It's something that came up late in our discussions, you know, surrounding this this effort, and it does contain a parking lot, and then also there's food processing that comes here. We're not quite sure if this would be appropriate for this particular project, but we want to take a look at it. So I know Lena Velasco, our community development director and planning director, is taking a look at you know, some opportunities that could potentially happen here. Right now, there is a current tenant in there, so that might be prohibitive for us being able to utilize this particular site. One thing that was interesting about this site is that if there were some resources to be able to secure a site like this, there actually is food processing going on here. So there was a discussion that perhaps it may be able to be used as a workforce development opportunity for something that might be a little bit more permanent or long-term. But at this point, it's still in the investigative stage. We really just don't have enough information to determine that it would be appropriate or not. And so last slide. And so really what everyone is looking at right now is, you know, going back to the strategy here is that any site that we look at to be able to create an area that is really more safe and conducive for all of the folks who are unhoused in any of these encampments is going to need timing to set up. It's going to need some necessary agreements and approvals to take place. If it's not city owned and privately owned, there's cost for setup. We have to figure out the number of vehicles that could be served, and there may be other information that we want to gather and take a look at. It's important for me to say right now, there's no decisions that have been made. At this point, we're looking at this and they're looking at some other sites as well. There are over 35 sites initially for the Safe Park program were examined throughout the city. And most of them, you know, that are larger areas are along Parkway. So we have looked at quite a few sites that are on the Parkway site. But what we really want during this phase is to try to just get some community input and some feedback. We do plan to have a follow-up meeting to our stakeholders meetings that we had a couple of weeks ago. And I know that there were several members of the MAC who joined that meeting, and we certainly welcome more folks to join that meeting and that discussion who are interested, who would like to share feedback. But I really just wanted to come today to give an update on where we were. And before I close out and open up for questions, I also wanted to mention that in terms of the people ask, how long are these sites going to be here? What's the strategy? How are the services to be provided? How do people transition from their vehicles or from RVs to perhaps, you know, maybe more interim and long-term sites? And so there really is a couple, there's not one path, there are a couple of pathways. So just briefly, I'll explain that. You know, if you're living in a vehicle or an RV, that's really your asset. And people who are living there are really hesitant to give that up. Some people have come up from tents and been able to purchase an RV or a vehicle. And, you know, and so that's the one thing that they have. A lot of the vehicles aren't very well maintained or operable. And that as well. So, you know, there are some people that we understand are just, you know, are going to be very reluctant to part ways with their vehicles. We're looking at different options, like potentially, are there places that we could store them if folks were able to access, you know, some of the county shelter, or if they were able to get space at some of the hotels, and utilize option for people to just present some options. The other option is obviously getting folks into what we call the county's HMIS system, so that they are eligible for anything such as, like, you know, housing vouchers or other resources that may open up. right now, I mean, there are some funds that will be coming down from the state, but they're not immediate. But, you know, in order to get that key to access those services and to even be eligible to get on any of the housing lists, you have to be assessed. So the goal is really to get everyone in the Castro Street site assessed. We have made a dent with the existing service provider to get some of those folks assessed, but part of the reason why we want to really reconfigure this encampment and extend the time is because there are more folks that really need to be assessed for us to be able to provide this service and to be able to connect with people to the longer term housing options in the time frame that we have given. So that assessment has to be done and completed. Some of you have asked about scattered sites. So the city did adopt an emergency ordinance that allows churches and faith-based groups to take on 1 to 4 RVs that would be case managed and selected to participate in that particular program to offer people a little bit more time. And that's with the mind of those who might not be ready to give up their vehicle and they're not quite, you know, connected to shelter yet, but they may need, you know, a couple of months to maybe 6 months to have some more time to connect with some of the housing opportunities. So we did a educational informational session on the permitting process for that particular program right after National Night Out. We had about 48 people who participated, and we have about 10 to 12 faith-based groups that are interested in doing that. That being said, 10 to 12 is not going to handle the large amount of volume of folks at Castro. So we really kind of need a more intensive effort. And then finally, just in terms of resources, I just want to say that there are, the city is looking at, you know, some of our existing resources and existing pots of funding that we may be able to use to help us to support Castro, in addition to looking for other resources and private resources and connecting with folks who could partner with us in this particular effort. Because we know that no matter what, there's going to have to be additional resources here because it's important for residents to feel safe. It's important for those who are residing at the site to feel safe, to be able to have access to services and just so we don't see any trash and blight that's going on. And we really have a safe space for people in an environment that that provides some dignity, be able to get the services that they need. So I'll open it up with that to any feedback or comments that you all have.
Yes, this is Dr. Henry Clark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Clark.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. So is any of these sites that you're referring to located in the city of Richmond?
Yeah, so we looked it over initially when we did the safe parking survey. We looked at over 35 sites, all of which were in the city of Richmond. The sites that I just kind of went over, these are North Richmond pertaining sites. We have looked at partnerships with Caltrans because they've worked with other cities to identify parking lots and, you know, and other places that could be utilized for this. And we also have looked at Chevron made some recommendations of some other sites that they might be able to support us with. But the ones that I reviewed today were specific to North Richmond.
Okay, but the city council, Richmond City Council, the sites that were looked at that are located in the city of Richmond, they were not in support of any of those sites being considered.
I think that they were in support of it. I think a lot of it is, you know, quite frankly, residents being in support of it. It's also, is a site kind of appropriate for the use? Is it paved? You know, can we fence it so that, you know, we can protect kind of like the integrity of it? So I don't think it's that, you know, necessarily there was not support among city council, but I think they also want to take in mind the, you know, the feedback from the residents. They also want to take in mind, you know, if it's a private property owner, we might think it's great, and they might say, well, no, I'm not interested in using it for that purpose.
Yeah, Yeah, well, at the moment, personally, I'm a little torn or uncommitted because of the fact that I watched those homeless encampments all over the state, and from what my research have shown, that they've all been bad news in terms of not only crime, drugs, prostitution, fires, and even murders. So I'm not really personally committed to making a decision on an homeless encampments in North Richmond, particularly because of the fact that we are already fighting crime and other issues, and I'm not inclined to add more fuel to the fire. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that, Dr. Clark. And I definitely, working in crime prevention, I definitely take that to heart. One thing I should mention, though, is that wherever we end up, locating the encampment, one thing we really want to stress is that it's important for it to be a step up. It's important that it's not kind of an encampment really, but it really is more of a community. And part of that is maintaining the safety. And right now, the encampment that we currently have has no structural integrity. So anybody can just kind of come in and out of there. You really don't have any kind of protection for those who are in the encampment or, for the neighborhood. So we're hoping that wherever the location ends up being, is that it's going to be a step up where people can get the real services and access to resources that they need.
Okay, Princess, I see your hand up, and then Lakeisha, please answer. Go ahead.
Hello, Princess here. Thank you, Michelle, for this presentation. And I appreciate the progress of where it's at now. I remember when the presentation was first brought to us, it was only one site that was being recognized. And so I appreciate bringing, having multiple sites that you guys are looking at. I do want to say and agree with Dr. Henry Clark around I know there's a lot of pushback around it was a lot of pushback around the North Castro site, which is close to the neighborhood. And so I just would like to agree with Dr. Clark about sites being close to the neighborhood, which can affect, the neighborhood. So I do just want to uplift that as well. But I have a question as far as the project. Is there any long-term funding committed for the space to be fully staffed? Like, you're saying like you want it to be an upscale or up version of a encampment, and is it going to be like fully staffed?
So right now we do have some resources committed, but more resources need to be procured. And that's something that the ad hoc is focusing on. There are, so if we were to find a more permanent site, which is something that the city's currently looking at, because the city wants to do a transitional village. I mean, everybody kind of talks about tiny homes or transitional villages. The city did make a commitment in terms of the reimagining public safety efforts to commit to doing that. And so if we were able to find someplace more permanent, there's some probability we could access some of those kinds of funds that would be dedicated for that. So it wouldn't just be for Castro. We could find somewhere where people could truly transition and be a transitional village. And there are some other resources that we might be able to tap into, but we definitely need more resources. I'm a very honest person, and I can say right now is that even with the new resources that are coming down, more resources are needed.
Okay, Kisha, the iPad.
Hello, Cynthia keep raising her hand. How you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you, Cynthia.
Good to see you.
Wait, hold on.
I think it's Leticia.
Leticia?
Oh,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear. Yeah. Hi,
Then
my
I
name
got
is
her,
Leticia.
and then I have you after that. Okay.
Yes, I am a North Richmond resident for many, many years, 17. One thing, thanks for your presentation and for your commitment to help the people. But one thing that makes me kind of sad is that I see all the places that you're presenting to us, they are in North Richmond. Do you have any other places on the other part of the city, or it's just North Richmond? Besides, and I gotta say that I feel really disrespect when the city basically set that Castro Encampment very close to this neighborhood, with any services, with any basically nothing, just allowing that to happen. And with the time when I was listening to the council comments, the city council person comments, it was like relocate riding to Castro. And I mean, it didn't seem fair to me neither. Then when the rejection from, Hilltop, and then from Civic Center, and then we're still stuck with this in here, with no services, with nothing, which is not safe for the people living there, and it's not safe for us as residents from this neighborhood. So I don't know, but I just don't feel like we really need this site and this part on this part of the county. I mean, and we already have a homeless shelter, which it will be working, and I think it's well handled and it's been working. But to attract more like this site, to me, it looks like it will attract more maybe more RVs or more, more people to our streets, and we are already like having a hard time trying to deal, with all this trash, with some people that lives in the houses, with the fires in the vacant houses. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, if I could share with you.
Michelle, I got hold you just a little bit. I want to try
Oh,
to
I'm
get as many
sorry.
comments as I can in, and then I'll have you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. I'll come back to your comments, Leticia.
So the actor is next, and then I have Cynthia.
Are you standing Cynthia's turn?
Ms. Alvarez. Do you have your hand up, Ms. Alvarez? Okay, Cynthia, go ahead.
Okay, as I said again, good afternoon, evening, whatever. As far as North Richmond is concerned and homeless encampment, North Richmond has been faced with a lot of things, a lot of problems, and homeless encampment is just something North Richmond do not need in order to keep moving forward as to becoming the city that we want it to be. Man, that's just like pouring gasoline on fire, okay? And out of the 5 places that you mentioned, 3 of them would be on and around the North Richmond area. I understand that the city of Richmond is faced with this homeless encampment problem, and unfortunate that the Castro is owned by the city and it's adjacent to North Richmond community. But in my opinion, that Castro encampment need to get out of North Richmond, period, point blank. And that's basically how I feel. Thank you.
Okay, Dulce.
Yes, thank you, Chair Don. Good to see you, Michelle, and thank you for the presentation. I would like to see more information, or once, I feel like we're rushing this, and I feel like the intake form, getting the information from the intake form would be really helpful to then determine what sites are useful for placing the houseless community at a particular site. I'm also interested in seeing like a plan for a transition, whether it's like, if we relocate it from Castro to X site, then how many months does the community plan to be there? I think that'll also help us as community in North Richmond understand the length of time. And I know that the Castro Street site has stayed there much longer than it was intended. But even as you're looking at other sites, it might be helpful to consider that information. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is that, there are 4 alternatives considered within, like, close to or bordering North Richmond. I also wonder if there's 4 alternatives that could be considered on the more proper city side. I do know that the city of Richmond does have vacant land and vacant parcels that are owned and operated by the city of Richmond. So I do wonder if they look at the SLA list, if there's any parcels that may really help and support with transitioning the houseless community to some of those sites. But those are some of my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Alvarez?
Hi, my name is Berta Alvarez. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to know for how long are you planning to house this? For how long this encampment are you planning to do? And also, what kind of services are you giving to these people? Because let's be honest, they not only don't have a house, there is a lot of bad people there. I pass by the Castro street every day and I see so many trash, so many, I would say that it's true. There is a lot of people that they don't have a place to live, but also there is like a hiding place for crime. You can see like new brand cars over there. So you usually think that this is not like a homeless people. They doing drugs, they're doing whatever they want to do over there. And also, who is gonna like check on these people if you do the encampment at the North Castro?
Okay, so a few more, then I'm gonna let Michelle answer the questions. And Andy had one, and then we're gonna go to you, Michelle, because I think a lot of people have talked now. So you can close out with some of your answers. I know you took notes, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, thank you for coming on. As Michelle has mentioned, that I have been involved with the meetings that has been taking place, and Michelle and other stakeholders have been doing a fantastic job in order to look at other sites in order to be able to move the encampment the way it is. One of the main things you have to look at for the encampment, you just can't look at a lot. The lot has to be preserved in a way of having a pavement. It cannot be just a dirt lot. The other thing is what has been brought up, the people that are there. And I have gone through and I've talked to the individuals. They are working, some work, some has just fell on hard times of being displaced and not having a home, but some are still working. You do have a mixture of individuals that are selling drugs. You do see, like the Alvarez said, you do see nice looking cars there. Those nice looking cars are people that is their homes, but they are working. They have no other place for shelter. The other thing is we've taken the time to look out to move this encampment out of the residential near North Richmond and to look at other sites. Therefore, we're still pushing for that. We're still looking at other sites. There are still other availabilities. We're still moving forward with that. And with that, I'm not going to keep going and going, but I'm going to let Michelle come up. But I do want to address the lot and the individuals that are there. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Good. Michelle, if you could go ahead now and respond.
Yeah, I'll try to go through these as quickly as I can. So just a point about, are we relocating people from Ryden to North Richmond? No, Ryden's a separate encampment. It's scheduled to be wound down by the end of the year. And we were able to make more progress on that encampment. So there aren't any plans to locate the people from Ryden in North Richmond, just to make that point. The other question that I know came up was, are we looking at other sites in the city? The absolute answer is yes. I just shared with you the ones from North Richmond tonight. but we've looked at, like I said, the park and ride, and all full disclosure, we looked at the park and ride in Hilltop. Caltrans, we thought that might actually be a viable option up until maybe 12 hours ago, but it's not anymore. We also have looked at other land. Chevron was looking at potentially deeding us some land, but it's not in our city limits, so we'd have to deal with another jurisdiction. We've looked at sites all over the city. We've looked at the old cafeteria site. We've looked at the fire training center. We've looked at all kinds of different sites throughout the city, which I'm happy to go through if anybody's interested. We've looked at the SLA list that Dulce talked about. We've looked at the vacant property list. Part of the challenge here is the city has to, it's helpful if we own the land, but if we don't own the land, then you have to negotiate with a private property owner and they have to agree to it. And, I think we've heard loud and clear that residents don't necessarily want this in their backyard and neighborhood. And I totally respect that. I understand that 100%. The challenge then becomes, then where? Because right now we're looking for options and you have to go through each and every single option and exhaust all the resources, get all the research. And, when you go through about 40 of them and it kind of turns out that none of them quite meet all that criteria and get this community support, you kind of have to go back to the drawing table. So I'm happy to share that information with folks so that you can kind of see that process and participate in that. And Letitia, to answer your question is because when Ryden first started, where it is and where it's located, there were they were able to secure it in a way that was set up a lot better than Castro, and people felt a lot more comfortable coming there and getting connected to resources. So that was one of the reasons. And then very quickly, some of the other questions that were asked about the intake process. I totally agree. This is not just necessarily a housing issue. We also have to do AOD, mental health, substance abuse treatment. So that is another issue as well. And one of the things we hope to do in a more permanent location is to bring in some of those resources. So, the AOD services are partnered at those sites. Not everybody has alcohol and drug and dependency issues, but for those who do, it can prevent them from getting into more long-term housing. And we'll have to address that. And the other thing is that this is not like a city encampment. So the Castro Street site as is, developed really organically. It's unsanctioned in turn of the city, but we didn't put it there. It actually kind of grew on its own. The city the city could come in and just remove it, quite frankly. But the concern is that if we remove it and we have no place for people to go, that presents a challenge because where do they go? Some of those vehicles are not operational. Some of them, they'll probably end up back on city and county streets in the neighborhoods rather than kind of accumulated in one area. And then there was a lack of shelter to be able to send people to that they are willing to go to. So those are all challenges that we have, but it wasn't, that is not a city sanctioned site, the one that is in Castro right now. And so then the plan, I really thought Dulce's point, and also I believe was Letitia's point about intake and coming up with a longer term plan about how we can move, once we have a site. The site is really contingent on us being able to do that plan, because until we have a actual feasible site, then we're talking about working where we are and perhaps just leaving the encampment where it is, which has a lot of safety and security challenges. That obviously is one option on the table, is just to leave it where it is unless we can find a viable alternative. So we're exploring both of those options. So I know that was a quick run through of some of the many questions that you may have. Tonight was really just about me, sharing some of that conversation that we had in that other group and bringing that back to the MAC so that there's feedback. But I really would love to have any member of the MAC who would like to sit in on our Castro stakeholders meetings. We're hoping to convene one soon, probably in the next couple of weeks, to have a discussion to do that. Or if you have other questions, I dropped my email in the chat. Please talk to me about this. I wish I could tell you that this was going to go away and that we had the perfect solution. Don't. It's challenging, but we can do it.
I see Ellen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm sorry to come on late, but I had trouble getting in. What I wanted to say is I so much agree with Cynthia, Dr. Clark, and all those who speak
against bringing all these things to North Richmond. And the city of Richmond, because they wanted to come to North Richmond, and they had that piece of property there, so they used that, and they're yet in North Richmond. So I'm with everyone else. I think they should move it and take it somewhere else. And can I ask a question also? SOS received some funding. So what was those funding used for? And I could have the amount incorrect, but I think it was like $1 million. And rather than keep putting homeless people here and there, why that funding couldn't be taken and build those tiny homes to give them a permanent place somewhere. And like we've already said, there's plenty of vacant land over in the city of Richmond where they could build homes and start putting people in, rather than take the money and use it for encampment spaces. Even though you're going to still need funding for that, but at least you can be housing some of those people permanently. So that was my thing, is what is that funding and what exactly do they use it for? That's what I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Eleanor. And so to answer Letitia's question quickly, yes, I can make that public. I can send it to the email of the MAC, and so that way you all can share it when we have those meetings. So I'm happy to add you guys on there so that that's shared. In terms of the funding, so that was reallocated from the Reimagining Public Safety Committee, and they made a decision that they wanted to support the SOS Richmond strategy, and that's why they received the funding, which was just shy under $1 million. So that is allocated to the streets team, which would help with a project like this, but it would not support everything that would be necessary to be able to fully kind of run, an upgraded version of the encampment and provide some of the additional services. So that was a decision that was made at the city council level. The recommendations of Reimagining Public Safety to take a look at how those dollars could be utilized to help support that strategy. So hopefully that answers some of your question here, but I'm open. If anyone has any other suggestions, it doesn't have to be in North Richmond, of a paved property that could potentially have up to 50 vehicles, and a property owner that's willing to work with the city on this. We're all ears. If that's what I go to bed and pray about at night, is that I will find that.
So Michelle, I have a question for you. So
Dr.
Hold on just 1 second. So there's one area that actually you said it was winding down and they use resources to, I guess, relocate folks somewhere or whatever. Was that part of the $1 million that was used for that, or where did that funding come from?
No, that was from the county. The county had HEAP dollars that were allocated previously to the safe parking program. And so the city also had $300,000 in lieu fees that were allocated to safe parking. And so they chose to allocate that funding, which I think was $550,000 total of the city and the county funds, to that effort. So yeah, that was not included in the SOS Streets team package. And to answer Marco's question about the streets team would be able to help with obviously a project like this, but it doesn't fund things like, towing or vehicle repair or, case management or AOD funding. That's not included in that particular contract.
Go ahead, Henry, you have a question. Henry, are you still there? Dr. Clark? Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate you coming out and giving us the presentation. From the comments that you got, this is something that's we're very interested in what goes on there. And so I think you're going to get some great participation from this group and continuing interest in what's going to happen. So thank you, and hopefully we can get you back again as things progress, whatever way that is. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have one too.
Okay, we're going to move on to presentations. Again, we had the other part was renaming of the North Richmond Center. I think the person is not here, Robert, and we're going to move that to the next MAC meeting. The person who's gonna make that presentation is not here. And so we'll move down to, we'll go to the City of Richmond Community Service Department. Are you guys here? Community Service Department is not here. Healthy Richmond. Richmond. Okay, Robert, you're up.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair Gilmore. Thank you, residents and MAC. This is our first meeting that we're broadcasting from the Senior Center in North Richmond since COVID hit. And with some technical difficulties like the blue screen, but other than that, things have gone very well. And there's a great group here, and we really appreciate it. We want, at the county, we want, of course, to maintain as much COVID safety protocols as possible, while also allowing for as much civic participation as possible. I want to just point out a couple of things really quick. First, tomorrow is California Clean Air Day. County Supervisor Joya is co-chair of the Bay Area chapter of Clean Air Day. We're incredibly passionate about clean air. This is an equity issue. The idea of clean air and healthy air for all, especially in our fixed line communities like North Richmond. I put in the chat box earlier, I can do it again, cleanairday.org. I hope you can all go on there, take 1 minute to take the pledge. And it's any small thing that you can do to reduce your air emissions on Clean Air Day. Clean Air Day is tomorrow. We are celebrating Supervisor Joya's office by meeting with Rich City Rides and many other community groups at 139 Washington along in Point Richmond, and then riding the Greenway all the way to Supervisor Joya's office. So across the city of Richmond on the Greenway, which is a great bicycle path. Please do something tomorrow. It could be not eating meat. It could be walking or biking to work. It could be maybe not going to the store tomorrow or the gas station. Any small thing makes a difference. Collective action is how we get toward cleaner air throughout California and the Bay Area. Another big opportunity, North Richmond Mitigation Fund. Many of you are aware of what it is. This is the mitigation fund that Supervisor Joya helped establish about a decade ago by levying fees on the dumps and transfer stations in the area, and then taking those fees and providing community benefits in North Richmond. The North Richmond Mitigation Fund is a board that manages the budget of those fees. It's about $1 million a year. It's a big deal. And it does so much here in our community of North Richmond. There's an opening on the board for a member of the MAC. And I have brought this up with some MAC members individually, and I just want to put it out there. We can talk collectively in the future about who might want to serve in this capacity. It's an alternate seat for the mitigation fund, and it's open to MAC members. With that, I'll conclude my report. Again, Robert Rogers, Supervisor Joya's office, and thanks so much everybody for joining us.
Questions for Robert? You're seeing CHTC. The only issue that, the only thing I need to report on is that we still have a lot of down payment assistance funds for first-time home buyers. So if you are interested in down payment assistance, closing cost assistance, CHTC has resources to help folks to buy homes if you are in the market to do so. And then we also have the counseling programs getting you ready to buy a home, put you in a position to, and there's a lot of services around there. We also have some rental assistance programs for counseling and working with individuals that may have come on bad parts because of COVID-19 and they're running behind on their payments, and maybe working with them with the it's one of the deals we put out there and then we service. So we've done a lot more than we have in the past. And we help a lot of people. So if you know anybody that needs assistance, either buying a home or staying in their property, feel free to contact us. Other than that, I'll turn it over to Jamie for her report. I mean, Victor.
Hello, everybody. My name is Victor Jimenez. I'm the new community service coordinator. I just want to say that we had a very successful Willie Spears cleanup in September. We had a lot of good feedback from residents that they were really happy because they were actually informed about this. And we had 22 hauls that accumulated to 56.66 tons of trash. I have also been patrolling and keeping up with my monthly log, and I've been working well with my partners, such as Richmond Sanitary, the city of Richmond, and also the sheriffs. And another thing that I want to say is that I will begin to start working on the community task force for the upcoming month already.
And in addition, hello, my name is Jane Collins. In addition to what you just get, information you just gave you, I'd like to give a couple of shout outs. And then those shout outs are from Willie Spears cleanup that occurred on the 18th. The first shout out goes out to the Richmond Police Department, Lieutenant Matt Stonebreaker, Sergeant Leah Joseph, Officer Woody, and Salala. I may be mispronouncing his name. Richmond Police Department showed up and showed out. They were right there. They were very supportive. So I wanted to give that shout out to them. They were with us the whole time, and they didn't just come out there and just post. They actually participated in what we were doing. The other shout out I like to give is to the Contra Costa County Public Works Department. And we had 3 people from the county. We had William Gay, we had Nick Walsh, and we had the maintenance supervisor, Michael Stevens, who is new, but they came out, they stayed the whole time, and they were fantastic in their participation. They really helped us out a lot, and they stayed the whole time. I'd also like to give a shout out to the city of Richmond Public Works and the abatement team and the code enforcement. All of these are partners in mitigation, and we are just so proud of them because they really did help make the cleanup a success. And this one was very successful because we got a lot of feedback from the community on this. We had, we also had from the mobile tool lending library, we had Jessica out there, and Jessica came out to table to let people know about the mobile tool, but Jessica did that, and she also got involved with the cleanup. So we just want to give shout outs to all of our partners who participated and did a fantastic job in helping to make this cleanup a success. So thank you to all of you.
All right, thank you, Victor. Thank you, Jane. Any questions? Okay, so we're going to move on to Reach Fellowship.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Gilmore. I'm going to speak on behalf of Reach Fellowship. Some of you might have heard, and some of you may not have heard, but Bishop Edwina Perez Santiago has now been hospitalized due to a headache that she had a couple of weeks ago, which turned out for blindness. She is now blind. She has been at Sutter Hospital. Sutter Hospital has sent her over to Stanford to run many tests to see what is the cause of her blindness. Right now, Reach Fellowship International is not operating due to her health at this point. She wanted to share with you all to let you know that she is in good spirits, but at this time, she does not know when she may be resuming her stance at Reach Fellowship. What I can ask for you all as a community and others to keep her in prayer because of her health problems. So she wanted me to let you all know at this point, Reach Fellowship is not operating and that we keep her in prayer. Thank you.
And we certainly will, and that's up to date. Moving on to Corporation Richmond. Corporation Richmond, anybody here from?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me in this space. I see some familiar faces, so glad to be here. And again, thank you for the MAC members for having me. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Joanna Gerdian. I am a project officer for Cooperation Richmond. And it was just pretty much an announcement. Just wanted to announce that we launched our first co-op cafe a couple weeks ago, and it was really successful. And so we just wanted to kind of give the MAC a heads up, given that North Richmond is one of our focus areas, and we really would want to see more participation from North Richmond residents in some of these spaces. And our next co-op cafe will be October, let me get it up. It will be October 28th from 5 to 7 p.m. on Zoom. The topic for that one will be how to structure a co-op and just like the day-to-day lives of co-op co-owners. We will be having guest speakers from Mandela Grocery Co-op, which is in West Oakland. And so it'd just be great to get more community participation in these events. We really, really want to work with more folks from North Richmond. And so it'd just be great to see more folks there. I can always, I'm not sure who exactly might be to Robert, just forward some of this information so you can have that out on like a county side or some kind of board where this information is made available to the public. I'd be more than happy to do that, but it'd be great to get more folks from North Richmond to have folks come and just learn about cooperatives and learn about the services that we offer at Cooperation Richmond. So again, thank you so much for letting me be here and great to see some of you. So yeah.
Thank you. So before we adjourn, is there anything any of the MAC members have to say before we adjourn? Just want to, we have a few minutes in case there were something that you wanted to get in that you didn't. Feel free.
Yeah, is it possible for me to give an update on Urban Tilth?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. Marco Lemus here. I just want to invite everybody to our Harvest Festival and also our celebration for acquiring the land for Urban Tilth, the North Richmond Farm. We're going to be celebrating, having a good time. Going to invite the community to come out. We're going to have costume contests, pie contests. What else? Games for the kids, prizes, all the good stuff. So let everybody know. And if there's any way I can, if you know anyone who would be interested in coming, let me know so that I can make sure they don't miss out. All right, thank you. Hope
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, so Cindy.
Yes, since we have a little time left, I'd just like to inform everyone that I'm starting to make preparations for my little annual Thanksgiving event out here where I live at. And I will be sending out donation letters, and I'm looking forward to support from everyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Don.
Yeah, Henry, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a problem with my computer, but in terms of that issue on the housing, since Annie is interacting with Michelle in that committee, I would suggest that your next meeting, how about raising with them the possibility about the vacant land out there at Point Melody.
Can I comment?
Without, I don't want to get too many.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She is entertaining questions and things of that nature, and so definitely, if you have recommendations like that to Annie, please give them to her, and she will communicate. Yeah, and you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah.
No, don't answer.
Oh, okay, yeah. But thank you, Dr. Clark, and you and I, we can speak on that. I can answer that for you, but not right now. I'll give you a call. But I did want the last MAC meeting we had, president for the neighborhood, Shield Street Neighborhood Council, would like to be added on our report out, Robert, if we can. Many times she has been on and she wanted to report out, and somehow she couldn't get it, she couldn't get in to actually give her report out, for the community. So if we could add our president, Marina Brown, for the Shield Street Neighborhood Council. Okay?
All right, everybody, thank you so much for your time and
There's a hand up.
there's a hand up there. Go ahead.
Yeah, really quickly, just want to announce that Richmond Land is going to host a conversation about what happens after the eviction moratorium, and how we need to make sure that land and housing is community hands, and that'll happen on Wednesday, October 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. So next week. It's over Zoom, and I can share the information with Robert so that Robert can email to us all. But just want to invite you all again, what happens post the eviction moratorium and how to think about land and housing in community hands. And it'll be Wednesday next week. Thank you all. Hope you all can join us.
Thank you.
Okay, and I do have one for the community. Davis Chapel is now open for services. We will be doing, checking the mask, having the mask, and taking the temperature. But I would like to invite you all to come to see our beautiful sanctuary. It is absolutely gorgeous. So we have service Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. to 11 o'clock. We may go over for 11:30. But you are surely welcome. And it's 369 Chesley here in North Richmond. So we are open and you are welcome, welcome, welcome. And that is Davis Chapel. Thank you.
All right. With that.
Dawn, I see two more hands.
Oh, okay. Where are my hands at?
Marco Lemus.
I thought he spoke.
Yeah, sorry, I have one more thing to say. We're also looking for community members to join our community advisory board to help govern the land that we just purchased, to make sure that we're always serving the community and that we're not speaking for anyone. So making sure that somebody from North Richmond is on our board and on our advisory committee. Yeah, everybody's invited. We're gonna have an application soon. So yeah, thank you.
And then we have another hand. Robert, I can't see.
Jessica?
Hi, thank you. I just had one quick question. Maybe someone in the MAC can help me. The North Richmond Mobile Tool Library, I have been trying to get a hold of somebody at the McLaughlin Temple. They have a park to their temple, and the North Richmond Mobile Tool Library. We have some interest in possibly setting up there on Saturdays So we were trying to find out if the temple owns that lot that is adjacent to them. And
Yeah, they own it. They own it.
That's their lot.
okay, I dropped off a letter to them and I tried to reach them by phone and email, but I haven't really been having any success. If anybody knows it.
You get in touch with Janie Holland, right? Yeah, she'll get you connected.
Yes, and Jessica, if all else fails, just go to the church on a Sunday when everybody is there.
Okay, so they are doing in person. Okay.
Oh, for sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, any other hands I don't see? You see any record? All right. No. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Have a rest of the good evening. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay, good. Okay, very good. Thank you. Although I didn't bring my glasses.
I gotta bring my laptop next time. I can't see.
I can't see either. I mean, you know, I have my glasses. I left my glasses because I didn't think I was.
I mean, I had mine in the car too,
But anyway, that was the first, it was great. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you for those comments.
So next month.